I never imagined the day would come when my own daughter would look me in the eye and see nothing but a payday. Her name is Sophie. When she was little, she used to curl up next to me on the couch after school, her tiny hand gripping mine as she told me about her day with breathless excitement. Back then, I was her whole world, a single mom doing her best, working double shifts at the diner to keep the lights on and a roof over our heads. There weren't fancy vacations or brand new clothes, but there was love, endless, fierce, unwavering love. But love isn't always enough, at least not when money starts whispering into the ears of those you thought you could trust. Things began to shift after Sophie left for college. She came back after 2 years different, sharper, more impatient. There was a constant bitterness in her tone, like she blamed me for something I couldn't quite place. "Why didn't you save more money, Mom?" she asked one night over dinner, barely touching her food. "If you'd made better choices, maybe I wouldn't be stuck here." I blinked at her from across the kitchen table, stunned. "Sophie, I worked 3 jobs to pay for your tuition. You're not stuck, you're home," she scoffed. "Yeah, exactly." After that, our conversations became increasingly strained. She started spending time with people I'd never met, sharp, dressed smooth, talking types who talked fast and smiled fake. One, in particular, a young lawyer named Damien, made my skin crawl. He started coming around more often, and I noticed how Sophie would speak differently when he was near, like she was rehearsing lines in a play only they understood. Then came the bills, the mounting debt, the realization that I was going to lose the house if I didn't catch up on 3 months of mortgage. I never told Sophie, she never asked. A week later, she showed up unannounced. I remember it like a slow-motion nightmare. It was a gray Thursday afternoon, rain drizzling against the windows like a ticking clock. I was folding laundry when the front door swung open with a loud thud. "Mom," Sophie's voice echoed through the house. I turned just in time to see her tumble down the front steps, or at least appear to. She landed awkwardly on the porch, her head snapping to the side as she let out a high-pitched scream. My heart stopped. "Sophie." I dropped everything and rushed to her side. She was crying no, sobbing, clutching her ankle. I slipped," she gasped. "You didn't fix the railing. I told you it was loose." The railing, yes, it had been a little wobbly for months. But she had never mentioned it. I was too stunned to process. I tried to help her up, but she cried out in pain. "Don't touch me, just call an ambulance." I froze, something about the way she said it, cold, calculated. Still, I did as she asked. The paramedics arrived quickly, 2 of them, a younger woman with kind eyes, and a tall, quiet man with years of experience etched into his face. As they approached, Sophie's cries grew louder, more theatrical. She clutched her leg and whimpered about the pain, how the fall was sudden, how the porch was clearly a safety hazard. The female paramedic, Maria, knelt beside her. "Where does it hurt exactly?" she asked gently. Sophie pointed to her ankle. "It's broken, I know it is. I can't even move it." Maria nodded, but something flickered in her eyes, a hesitation. She glanced at her partner, who gave a subtle shake of his head. They began their examination, careful and thorough. I stood frozen a few feet away, my hands trembling. Something didn't feel right, not just with Sophie's performance, but with the whole situation. The way she kept glancing toward the driveway, then I saw him, Damien, leaning against his car across the street, arms folded, watching. It clicked like thunder in my chest. This wasn't an accident. This was a setup. As if on cue, Sophie let out another exaggerated moan and said, "I told her weeks ago about the railing, but she did nothing. Now look at me." Maria gently pressed along Sophie's ankle again, her expression unreadable. Then, suddenly, she stood. Her voice was calm but firm. "She's not injured," Maria said to me, loud enough for Damien to hear across the street. I blinked. "What? She's faking it," she said again, more directly. "There's no swelling, No bruising, no tenderness. Her muscles are relaxed, and she flinched before I touched her. Sophie's eyes widened. You don't know what you're talking about. Maria tilted her head. Actually, I do. I've seen dozens of real fractures and dozens of fake ones. This isn't an injury, this is theater. The male paramedic finally spoke. And we record every assessment we do. You requested emergency care under false pretenses. That's a crime. Sophie went pale. Wait, no, you need to get up, ma'am. Maria interrupted. There's nothing wrong with you. Unless you'd prefer, we call the police instead of taking you to the hospital. Sophie sat in stunned silence, her face slowly morphing from panic to anger. For the first time, I truly saw her, not as my daughter, but as a stranger I no longer recognized. Maria turned to me and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. I don't know what's going on, she said quietly, but you should be careful. She came here with a plan. My knees gave out, and I sat on the porch steps as Sophie slowly stood, her injured leg suddenly fine. She glared at the paramedics, at me, then stormed off toward Damien's car. He didn't say a word, just opened the door and let her in. They drove off without looking back, and I sat there, alone in the rain, the pieces of my heart scattered around me like glass. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog of disbelief. I replayed the moment over and over in my mind, Sophie's fall. The way her voice had wavered, with just enough panic to sound believable, the calculated timing of Damien's appearance. I thought I was raising a daughter. Somewhere along the way, I'd raised a stranger. I didn't hear from her after that. No calls, no texts, no apology, just silence. Then, 4 days later, an envelope arrived at my door. Certified mail. I stood staring at it for a long time, my fingertips cold as I finally opened it. It was a notice of intent to sue. From Sophie, signed and prepared by Damien's law firm. Negligent maintenance of property resulting in emotional distress and physical harm. A 7-page document accusing me, her mother, of knowingly creating unsafe conditions on the front porch that led to severe injuries and ongoing psychological trauma. She was seeking $150,000 in damages. I dropped the papers. My hands shook as I sat down, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the fact that she had planned this, that this wasn't heat of the moment anger or emotional lashing out. This was cold, strategic, greedy, and that meant one thing. She believed I couldn't fight back, but she'd forgotten something. I might be broke, I might be exhausted, but I'm not a fool, and I'm not a doormat. The visit 3 days later, a knock came at the door. It was Maria, the paramedic. I stared at her, startled. I hope this isn't a bad time, she said kindly. I wanted to check in on you. I stepped aside to let her in. The house was quiet, too quiet, and filled with an energy I couldn't quite name. I didn't get to say thank you, I said, for what you did, for seeing through it. She sat down at the kitchen table, glancing around with a familiarity I hadn't expected. I've seen people fake accidents before, she said softly, usually for insurance or workers' comp, but never to hurt someone they're supposed to love. I sighed. She's suing me now. Maria nodded. I figured she might. The guy across the street, that lawyer, I recognized him. He used to represent scam artists for soft tissue injury claims. My stomach tightened. I don't have the money to fight this, I whispered. Maria leaned forward. But I do. I blinked. What? She smiled faintly. Not money, a proof. We record every single call we go on, remember? Body cams, audio notes, timestamps, the works. I already pulled the footage and sent it to my supervisor. She's trying to claim a spinal injury on her report, but the footage shows her walking to the car without issue. That's fraud. I stared at her, stunned. Would you testify, if it comes to that? She didn't hesitate. I already filed a statement and forwarded it to the DA. The setup unravels 2 days later. I received another letter, this one not from Sophie, but from the district attorney's office. An investigation had been opened into attempted insurance fraud and perjury. Apparently, Damien had filed an insurance claim using Sophie's false injury report, and Maria's video footage directly contradicted every claim. I almost didn't believe it until I got a call. It was Sophie. She didn't say hi. No, how are you? Just, you're trying to destroy me. I stayed quiet. You think you're so smart, dragging Maria into this like some hero. My voice was calm. You lied. You tried to ruin my life. You ruined mine. She snapped. You never gave me the life I deserved. You always made me feel small, like I had to beg for scraps. No, I said slowly. I gave you everything I had. I skipped meals so you could eat. I pawned my wedding ring so you could have school books. I worked until my back gave out, and you sold me out for a payout. There was silence on the line. Then, you'll regret this, click. Fallout the next week was a whirlwind. Damien's law license was suspended pending review. His firm released a statement distancing themselves from the fraudulent claim, and Sophie. She went silent again. Word spread through town faster than wildfire. Neighbors who once smiled politely now whispered behind their hands. But this time it wasn't about me, it was about her. A local news outlet picked up the story. Daughter fakes fall to sue mother. Paramedic exposes scheme. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry when I saw the headline, but I knew one thing for sure, the truth had won. And sometimes that's enough. Despite her silence, Sophie didn't drop the lawsuit, though her tone shifted dramatically. Gone were the bold accusations and demands. Her new legal rep, a court-appointed attorney, requested mediation instead of a trial, citing emotional distress on the part of the plaintiff. But this wasn't just about mediation anymore. This was about accountability. I attended the hearing alone. When I walked into that courtroom, my knees felt like jelly. My palms were cold. And yet, as I saw Sophie sitting at the far end of the room, in a fitted black dress, arms folded tight, eyes distant, I didn't feel anger. I felt grief for the little girl who used to make macaroni art with glitter, the child who cried when she lost her favorite stuffed bear, the teenager who used to fall asleep in my lap after late night movie marathons. But that person, that daughter, was long gone. And the woman before me, she was the architect of my heartbreak. The judge was an older woman, sharp and no nonsense. She'd clearly read everything in the file. She began with Sophie's side, though her attorney looked visibly uncomfortable delivering the weak arguments they had left. Your Honor, the plaintiff experienced a traumatic fall due to a known hazard. That's enough, the judge cut in. Let's go ahead and review the footage. Maria, sitting in the row behind me, gave a small nod as the courtroom screen lit up. The moment replayed, Sophie's exaggerated cries, the fake limp, Maria's gentle assessment, the moment she got up and walked perfectly fine to Damien's car. The room was silent when it ended, and in that silence the judge spoke. Miss Carter, what you attempted here is not only dishonest, it's criminal. Falsifying injury reports for financial gain is fraud, and attempting to sue your own mother in the process is unconscionable. Sophie didn't speak. Her eyes burned holes in the table. The judge dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice, meaning she could never file it again. But that wasn't all. The court refers this case to the district attorney's office for further review under insurance fraud statutes. She continued, "You should prepare yourself for criminal charges." Sophie's face turned ghost white, and in that moment I felt no triumph, only the crushing weight of what we had become. Aftermath: Sophie didn't go to jail, not yet. The DA gave her a deferred sentence and community service, likely due to her age and the public embarrassment she had already endured. Damien wasn't so lucky. He was fined heavily, and his firm dropped him within the week. The story spread like wildfire, online and off. My phone rang with reporters, neighbors offering half-hearted apologies, and people asking how could she do that to you. But I never answered them. Because the truth is, I don't know. The final visit 2 months later, on a quiet Sunday, there was a knock on my door. It was Sophie. She looked thinner, paler, as if the lies she built had collapsed on top of her. She stood on the porch, the same porch where she faked her fall, and looked up at me with red eyes. "I'm not here to fight," she said quietly. I wanted to see if you hate me." I stared at her, unsure how to answer. "I don't hate you," I finally said, "but I don't know who you are anymore." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought if I had the money, I could start over. I could fix things, but I destroyed everything instead. I stepped onto the porch beside her. The wind was cool, almost cleansing. "You didn't destroy me," I said softly. "You just taught me to stop waiting for the daughter I used to know." She nodded, crying harder now. "I'm sorry, Mom. I really am." I looked at her, and for a flicker of a second, I saw the little girl again. But just a flicker. "I hope someday you mean that," I said. She left a moment later, and I haven't seen her since. A quiet kind of victory time passed. I didn't get a cent in damages, no compensation, no magical ending where everything was made whole. But I found peace. I repaired the railing, not just physically, but symbolically, reinforcing the part of me that had been shaken to its core. I rebuilt myself from the inside out, stronger, wiser, quieter. Maria and I stayed in touch. Turns out, she'd once been through something eerily similar with her brother. Maybe that's why she saw through Sophie's act so quickly. One afternoon, we had coffee, and I asked her why she came back to visit me after the incident. She smiled. "You reminded me of my mom," she said, "and I never got the chance to stand up for her. This time I did." Closing words. Not every betrayal ends in revenge. Sometimes the sweetest justice is simply surviving it. Surviving the lie, the betrayal, the heartbreak. And walking forward, even if it's with a limp no one can see, because healing doesn't always mean forgiving. Sometimes healing just means letting go, and I have.